the Saab two-barrel carb conversion project is done. I've put the finishing touches on it, and I'm sure the first thing you want to know about is this hood, or bonnet if you're in the UK. Before, this hood was painted in flat black spray paint that came from a rattle can with a Swedish flag stripe down the middle, because this is the hood from my old Saab 96, and my old Saab 96 was painted a different shade of blue, which didn't match the rest of the car whatsoever. So I covered it up real quick and dirty like for a car show that I had entered this car into, and it did the job a couple of years ago, temporarily. But that was a couple of years ago. It was getting high time I replaced the temporary paint hack job I had on the hood with something a little more permanent. The first step to painting this hood was, of course, stripping all of the paint off of it. I had never done anything like this before, so I tried two different methods. On the underside, I attacked the paint with an angle grinder and a paint decimating wheel. This, as I found out later, was far too aggressive and left gouges in the metal that's actually still visible through the paint on the underside of the hood. For the top side of the hood, I used aircraft stripper. This stuff worked well, but it left one heck of a chemically mess, so I don't think I'll be doing that again either. Now, I don't have any painting or blasting equipment, nor do I have any experience or knowledge about the subject, but I happen to know someone that does. My dad. So I hit the hood with a light coat of primer to prevent rust and hauled it over to my dad's shop. The plan was to sand off the primer, sandblast the nooks and crannies I couldn't get with a sander, and finally paint the hood. Unfortunately, by the time we had finished stripping the hood of every last vestige of paint, it was too late in the day and the temperature had dropped below 50 degrees. The paint won't flash off properly at that temperature, so I had to leave the hood there with my dad so he could paint it on his own time on a day that was warm enough. It's a shame I couldn't contribute to the paint job itself, but I can't control the weather, and I probably would have messed up the paint anyway. And here it is. It looks pretty good. Now, it isn't perfect. My dad isn't, nor does he claim to be, a professional auto body painter person. If you look really closely, there's a barely visible darker stripe somewhere in the middle of the hood, and the finish is a tiny bit orange peely, but the latter can be remedied with large amounts of wet sanding. Also, the paint color isn't a perfect match with the rest of the car, but I did that on purpose. I had the paint shop spectra analyze the inside of the trunk lid, where there's no UV damage, to get the paint color for this hood. So the color on the hood is much closer to the factory original color than the weathered exterior of the rest of the car. Now, there's a tiny chance I might repaint the rest of this car at some point in the future, at which point the hood will finally match the rest of the car. But until then, it doesn't quite line up. Painting the hood was the biggest thing I did since we last spoke, but I did do a few other small things here and there. I got a replacement blinker lens to replace the one I broke. I got a replacement gas cap to replace the one I lost. Shout out to Paul Nielsen on both of those things. I put new carpet in the car because whatever was in there didn't fit properly and seemed to be a home-cut mess. So I put in new carpet that I happened to have for my old Saab 96. It was actually a factory original part, so it looks much better in there. So how does it drive? Fine. I'm driving it around like a normal car. A slow normal car, but a normal car. Now, I didn't get quite the power gains from this carburetor upgrade that I was expecting, but the sound gains more than make up for it because it sounds phenomenal now, and I didn't see that coming whatsoever. So that's a nice added bonus. Now, I still have a couple of little tiny issues to work out. One is cold starts. There's something wrong with the fuel mixture. When I choke it, just wants to die. It's no big deal. When the engine gets up to temperature, it runs fine and it idles properly. But before that, a little bit of an issue. Not that it matters, because I'm not going to drive this car in the winter anyway because of the salt on Missouri roads. But the second little issue is one that's already been there, is that carburetor base plate I made that was absolutely hideous, and the silicone that mates the two surfaces together probably won't last very long. So I'm going to have that carburetor base plate remade by someone that knows what they're doing and has proper tools that aren't a drill press being used as a milling machine. So you'll see whatever comes of that in a future video. But otherwise, yeah, it drives fine. I've just been driving it around the past couple of days, just two places, like you do with a car. Let's put it in the third. So the project is pretty much finished now, but this is a project car. They never end. What do I have left to do on this car? Or I should say, what things need doing that I may or may not get to. Well, the first thing is the cosmetic issues. It has quite a fair amount of cosmetic issues around the car. It's mostly little rust bubbles around the surface of the car, usually around trim pieces or blinkers or things like that. It also has a fair amount of panels that don't line up for whatever reason. This car has been in a small front-end collision, so none of the panels in the front line up properly. The interior of this car also has some cosmetic issues. Now, I replaced the carpet, and the seats look fantastic, but around the footwell, it looks like it has some water damage. The panels are either falling apart or, just missing. So that's going to need some attention at some point. But by far the biggest issue is something I discovered when replacing the carpet. It's rust. There is so much rust in the footwell that I didn't previously know about. The floor, in many cases, isn't connected to the rocker panels or to the firewall. It's just a mess. And some mechanic at some point in the car's history has cut a great big hole in the firewall to access what I presume is the transmission rear mount. So that's annoying, but at least he put a handy bolt-on panel to cover it up, right? No, it was a hack job. It shouldn't have been done, but there's so much rust around it, I'm not sure I even care about the hole in the firewall. I may not get to the small cosmetic things around the car, but I have to do something about that cancerous rust that's around the floor pan. It's unsightly and it's reducing the structure. So that's unfortunate. But what am I going to do? These are old cars, they hide secrets, and not all the secrets are good ones. At least it runs properly now and I can drive it around. That's something. Well, that's it for this video. Until next week, thanks for watching.